Well, good morning. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for kicking off your week with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's off today. We are going to begin our show with the death of South Carolina's powerful Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. He passed away late Saturday in Washington following a trip to Ukraine. Now, Graham's office said on Sunday the preliminary cause of death was aortic rupture. The senator had started out as one of then candidate Trump's harshest critics, but ultimately became one of his strongest allies. Graham's been a controversial and divisive foreign policy hawk throughout his career. He was a staunch supporter of Israel, of America's war on Iran, and one of the strongest advocates for sending military aid to Ukraine in its war against Russia. Well, this morning, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are remembering his legacy. NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr has more for us on this. Hey, Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Presidents, past and present, foreign leaders, and fellow colleagues are all remembering Senator Lindsey Graham as one of the most influential lawmakers Capitol Hill has ever seen as they begin looking to who could fill his seat. This morning, colleagues on both sides of the aisle are honoring the life and legacy of South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who built his influence on bipartisan relationships and on 30 years of experience in the halls of Congress.
He started public service because he wanted to make sure that no one felt invisible.
No better friend, no tougher adversary.
On Saturday night, emergency responders rushed to the 71-year-old's Capitol Hill home.
EMS 6 responded to Angel 7 Medic 7 with cardiac arrest.
His office saying the preliminary medical examiner's report cited a tear in the main artery from the heart due to cardiovascular disease. President Trump said he spoke to the senator the night before he died. Initially a vocal Trump skeptic, Graham became one of the president's fiercest allies and a forceful advocate for his agenda.
The friendship grew. It just grew. And he was an amazing advocate.
Senator Graham had just returned from a trip to Kyiv, where he met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and announced a breakthrough in White House backing for a bipartisan Russia sanctions bill.
I've never been more optimistic than I am today that we have the formula to end this war.
Also a staunch supporter of Israel, Graham was a longtime foreign policy hawk, advocating an aggressive approach to adversaries. He served in the Air Force and as a military lawyer. His death now leaving a hole in the Senate and prompting questions about who will replace him. He was running for a 5th term in South Carolina, the state now preparing instead for a snap primary, with the governor to name a temporary replacement through the end of the year. And Senate Republicans are already missing the vote of Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, who was hospitalized a month ago. After weeks of speculation, his office released a photo and statement with McConnell saying he did not suffer a heart attack or stroke, but that he fell, was briefly unconscious, then developed pneumonia and is now regaining strength in a rehab facility. Savannah, back to you.
All right, Alice, thank you for kicking us off this hour. Well, we heard a little bit there from President Trump and Alice's piece, but Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker did speak exclusively with the president about Senator Graham's death and has more. Kristen, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke with President Donald Trump in a phone interview about the legacy of one of his closest allies, the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Can you tell us, Mr. President, how you received this news and your immediate gut reaction when you heard it?
He called and he said, we're all set for the Save America Act. He was pushing the Save America Act like crazy. He got back, said he just landed from Ukraine. I said, that's a long trip to make. And he said, he sounded a little tired, but perfect, but a little bit tired. Had a right to be. And he was a worker. He was really a worker. But he sounded great, actually. But he actually said he was tired. But he wanted to pass the Save America Act. And I said, well, we're going to get it done, Lindsey. We're going to get it done. I'll see you soon. And then that was it. And that was, very around the time. It couldn't have been much longer. It could have been his last call. I don't know exactly. But I got a message about 1 o'clock in the morning from one of the people at his office that he had passed away. I said, I just can't believe it. He was like a member of the family to me. It's very tough, actually.
Our thanks to Kristen Walker for that. Well, Graham's passing comes at a critical political moment. He was facing a race to be reelected in a closely divided Senate. So let's continue this conversation with NBC News political reporter Megan Brand. Megan, good morning. So Graham looked to be this heavy favorite there for reelection this fall in South Carolina. Not really a surprise. What happens to his seat now? What comes next?
Yeah, that's right. South Carolina is a state that leans Republican. In terms of what happens next, Governor Henry McMaster, he is a Republican as well. He is going to appoint someone to fill out the remainder of Senator Graham's term through January 3rd of next year. Now, as you mentioned, Senator Graham was up for re-election this fall, and so now Republicans are going to have to find a replacement on the ballot for Senator Graham. So now there's going to be a Republican primary on August 11th. Candidates who want to run can officially start filing on July 21st. That is next Tuesday. Now, it's still very early, so we don't know yet who the governor is going to appoint, and we don't know exactly what this field of candidates could potentially look like for that primary as well. Yesterday, in that interview on Meet the Press, President Trump had said that he had an idea of who he thought that he might want the governor to appoint, someone he thought that who would be great for the governor to appoint, but he declined to say exactly who it was, saying that it was too close to the senator's death, Savannah.
Megan, tell us just some of the names, though, being floated as potential replacements.
Yeah, so a source familiar said that Representative Nancy Mace is strongly considering jumping into this race. She had also previously ran for governor earlier this year in that Republican primary, and she lost. You also have another potential name in Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett. She also ran for governor in that primary and lost as well. A source close to Evett said that she has been receiving dozens of texts and phone calls encouraging her to jump into the race. Someone who has said that they are not going to run is Congressman Joe Wilson. He said that he intends to continue to run for his House reelection instead of jumping into the Senate race. Now, you also have another businessman, Mark Lynch. He's the person who had challenged Senator Graham in that primary race earlier this year and lost. Now, in a statement yesterday, when he was acknowledging and mourning the death of Senator Graham, he did not say in that statement on social media whether he planned to run, saying that it wasn't a day for politics. But later on, the New York Times reported that he told them that he intends to run for that seat, Savannah.
Megan, we're also following the health of another senior Republican, that's Senator Mitch McConnell. He was hospitalized mid-June, but his office didn't give a reason at the time. We just heard a bit about this from Alice, but we did get this statement from his office. Tell us what we're learning now.
Yeah, that's right. So in that statement, it was the first time that we are hearing directly from the senator since his hospitalization weeks ago. In that statement, he also included a picture of him with his wife, Elaine Chao. He included a little bit more information and included in the statement that you're right to expect your representatives to work hard for you, saying that part of his decision to not seek another term was the fact that he was being honest about the demands of Senate work. But he added, I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do. He also disclosed more information about what led to his hospitalization, saying that he was briefly unconscious during that incident. He also said that his doctor said that he has no broken bones, he doesn't have a concussion, he didn't have a heart attack or a stroke, he does not have tumors or hemorrhages. He also said that when he was in the hospital, he dealt with a mild case of pneumonia. He said that he has now been able to be moved to a rehab center and that his doctors have advised him to hold off on returning to the Senate floor, but he said in that statement that he's continuing to work with his team to address the issues faced by his constituents.
All right, Megan Brand, thank you so much. Well, in the Middle East, the U.S. and Iran continue to trade strikes over control of the Strait of Hormuz. Overnight, U.S. allies in the region say they faced aerial threats from Iran after the country vowed retaliation for U.S. attacks on its territory. Now, the U.S. says it hit dozens of targets over the weekend in what it's saying is a response to these Iranian attacks on commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley has the latest details. Matt, good morning.
Well, it's been another violent week with shots fired across the Middle East, the U.S. and Iran exchanging fire. This time, several U.S. allies in the region are also involved. Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, all reporting that they had received fire from Iran. Now, both sides are denying that they were the ones who instigated. All of this comes down to a dispute over the Strait of Hormuz, a dispute that was supposed to have been resolved weeks ago with the signing of that memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran. Now it looks like both sides are continuing to fire. Iran fired at what they said were ships who were crossing the Strait of Hormuz without going by the specified routes that they had said were guaranteed as part of this memorandum of understanding. Now the U.S. had said that they have been continuing to fire a third straight volley of shots over the weekend. The latest came overnight, attacking what they said were radar installations in Iran. And the Jordanians and Bahrain and Kuwait had reported that their missile interceptors had also tried to intercept Iranian projectiles that were fired by Iran in retaliation. Now, the Iranians have come out, their foreign minister, as recently as just in the past couple of hours, and stated that the fault for breaking the ceasefire is with the U.S. President Donald Trump spoke with Meet the Press yesterday on Sunday, describing how they had gone back to firing against the Iranians, how the Iranians had just about made a deal with the U.S. before they once again started shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Regardless, no matter who you believe, it looks as though the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and across the broader Middle East has returned almost entirely to the state it was before that memorandum of understanding brought in what could have been a lasting ceasefire.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Hagar Shamali. She's the host of Oh My World on YouTube and the former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN, also the former NSC director for Syria and Lebanon. Hagar, good morning. So we are nearing the halfway mark of this 60-day window for the U.S. and Iran to make a deal under that memorandum of understanding. But this latest escalation, I mean, it really feels like a deal seems very far out of reach. What does this renewed fighting tell you about either side's goals right now and what's possible?
Thanks, Savannah. Well, the bottom line is that this renewed fighting just further highlights that the Iranian regime are a group of terrorists. And this is it's predictable. They're starting to try to blame the United States. And the fact is that they don't like that they saw that gas prices going down. They don't like that the Lebanon-Israel peace process is continuing. They want to squeeze as much as they can and up the pressure in advance of a final deal. But they've never been further from a final deal. And frankly, I just expect this limbo situation and volatility to go up and down. And I've said that from the beginning, really through the midterms. And that's because both sides have an interest in buying as much time as possible. The Iranian regime, if they can survive this until the next U.S. president, that will be winning to them. And for the president of the United States, for Trump, it's just having low gas prices through the midterms until then he feels a bit more freedom to pursue policy toward the Iranian regime without as much domestic pressure.
Hagar, the big leverage here that Iran has is the Strait of Hormuz and the power, the control that they have exercised over it, trying to essentially change operations in the Strait from even prior to this conflict. Do you think that the U.S. has to continue these attacks on Iran as essentially the only way to combat Iran's threats to shipping in the Strait and really, therefore, the global economy?
Yes, so I'm glad we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz specifically, because the Iranian regime is alleging that the memorandum of understanding gives the Iranian regime alone the sole authority to control maritime navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. That is absurd. It is international waters. They never had this power, as you just mentioned. The fact is that they are, in order to try and get this to move forward, the only language that the Iranian regime really truly understands is the threat of military force. That coupled with sanctions. Now, the waivers for oil sanctions continue. They claim that they're upset that the Treasury Department issued some sanctions last week, but that had nothing to do with oil sanctions. Oil sanctions have been lifted temporarily. There's been a waiver for them, not other sanctions. So the Iranian regime, again, I'm not surprised by it. I used to work on issues related to the Iranian regime for over a decade. It's a group of terrorists. They can't trust them in a bargain or any kind of deal. And they're always going to try to maneuver in a way to place pressure, but they're overplaying their hand here.
What is it that's going to bring these two back to the negotiating table in a meaningful way? How is that possible?
It has to be a mix, in my opinion. It has to be a mix of military threats and force that really matter to the Iranian regime, certainly activity in the Strait of Hormuz, additional targets, making their ability to strike other boats or navigation in the Hormuz incapacitated and neutralized. But I think also that the U.S. has to threaten as much as possible things like seizing Karg Island, the island in the north that allows Iran to produce and refine its oil. And given that the Iranian regime is not holding up its end of the bargain on the MOU, we have to snap back those oil sanctions immediately to prevent them from taking those profits for rebuilding, rearming themselves and their proxies. But without that loud message, the regime is not going to feel the pressure to come back to the table. And they've done it before, by the way. We can bring them back to the table.
Hagar Shamali, as always, we so appreciate your expertise and analysis this morning. Thank you. Well, back here at home, severe storms carved a trail of destruction in spots around the country. This morning, people in Philadelphia, they are still cleaning up after powerful wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour swept through the city on Saturday. The winds were so strong, they ripped the roof off an apartment building, uprooted trees and downed power lines. And then meanwhile, in Louisiana, parts of New Orleans were soaked by flash floods that forced people to abandon their cars after 5 inches of rain fell. The problem was made worse when at least 3 of the city's storm water pumps quit working. And in southern Missouri, storms from that same system caused flash flooding that prompted the emergency evacuation of a summer camp. The National Guard airlifted the stranded campers on Black Hawk helicopters and flew them to safety. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro has more for us.
Damaging storms leaving a trail of destruction.
Oh my God!
With more severe weather on the way. Philadelphia hard hit by at least 4 severe microbursts Saturday.
It's definitely not normal.
With straight-line wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour, according to the National Weather Service. The storms ripping the roof off an apartment building.
I heard a giant boom, and I'm like, did we get hit by lightning? And then I looked out the front door and saw the roof was on top of my vehicle.
Another building partially collapsing, scattering bricks. Trees toppled onto roads, smashing cars. One tree landing on electrical wires, seen smoking in the aftermath.
It's like a thunder, a thump, just a roar, like a whoosh.
The mayor issuing a declaration of disaster emergency after thousands were left without power. In Tennessee, flash flooding sweeping through the eastern part of the state, triggering mudslides. And in Louisiana, parts of the New Orleans area left soaked with inundated cars. Missouri still cleaning up from deadly flash flooding that also prompted the evacuation of a summer camp. In Lesterville, several vehicles left abandoned in mud and some trapped by the rising water. Trailers seen toppled over along the riverbank. As more rain is expected to batter parts of the South, most of the country also bracing for extreme heat.
A heat dome is now setting up over most of the country, with many expected to see highs in the 90s and triple digits over the next several days. Back to you.
All right, Valerie, thank you so much. Well, as we begin another week, let's get a closer look at what is to come. With your morning news now weather, we have meteorologist Andrea Romero joining us this morning. Hey, Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. And we're looking at more heat across the country, especially along the northern tier. We can see that we have over 90 million people at risk of this prolonged heat, with heat alerts in effect that will continue through Thursday. And that basically stretches all the way here over the northern plains, from the Great Basins into the Great Lakes, and now even including the Northeast. And afternoon highs are expected to reach the triple digits in many locations. In fact, we're looking at the possibility of some record high temperatures today. For example, here in Rapid City with 105 is the record. We're going to be at 104. So we're really right there at the brink of establishing a new record there. In Lander as well, in Grand Junction, International Falls. So we're really close to those high numbers. And these warmer than average temperatures will continue today into the next couple of days. Temperatures that are 10 to 20 degrees above average for all this location. And that heat is going to be moving further east. And we're looking at 90-degree temperature starting tomorrow here in the Big Apple. In fact, we could have a new heat wave impacting this region, with 3 consecutive days of temperatures in the 90s that once again, with the high humidity, will feel even warmer. Now, as far as a severe severe storms. We are tracking some of that this morning as well, and that's mostly concentrated here over parts of North Carolina, even into Virginia. We also have some heavy storms down south near New Orleans. Now, we have some flood watches up. We even have a flash flood warning here in northwestern parts of North Carolina. And these heavy rain showers will continue. These storms will continue throughout the day. Today, we have this flash flood risk that extends from this area all the way into Texas and even parts of the Southwest. We have some monsoonal moisture that's moving into the area. So we're expecting more rain to develop in the next couple of days in this part of the country. So we're looking at these slow-moving storms are going to be impacting the southeast along a stationary front today into tomorrow with up to 2 inches per hour that can fall. So we are talking about a rainfall accumulation amounts of over even 3 inches through Wednesday, especially here in parts of western Texas, where we have, like I said, the possibility of those heavy storms setting up, those monsoon storms setting up in those areas. Now, we have the storm threat today for the southeast. We have those record high temperatures that are happening in the northern plains, and we're expecting by midweek to have sunny and warm temperature here in the northeast. Of course, some record temperatures are possible, and that high heat will continue to impact. So you want to make sure you take those steps to keep yourself safe, making sure you take frequent breaks from the heat, limit those outdoor activities, and of course, drink lots of water. Back to you, Savannah.
Really good reminders as we're just about halfway through this summer. Andrea, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.